namely, to the end of procreating and raising children. Nevertheless, in the same place where he deals with polygamy, Thomas reveals a certain complexity in his thinking. He says that the principal end pertains to the human couple, namely procreation, pertains to the human couple according to their generic nature, which they share with other animals. They're mammalians. They're mammalians. And thus having and raising children is a good of marriage, pertaining to us in our generic nature, what we share with animals. Of course, we share it in a human way. That is, we conduct ourselves not in an animal way, but in a human way. The secondary end of marriage, which pertains to the human couple precisely as human, is cooperation in the activities necessary not just for life, but for a cultured life, an educated life, a human life. Thus, the spouses owe each other fidelity, which is another of the goods of marriage. Beyond these two natural ends, marriage among Christians has the end of signifying the union of Christ and the church. And so the sacrament, as with Augustine, is a good of marriage. Okay? That's pretty much the medieval state of things. And it's what's recognized and codified in a neat little formula by the Code of Canon Law of 1917. Okay? Somebody help me with the time. I cannot see the clock.
15 to 4. Quarter to 4. 3:45.
Quarter to 4. Okay. I won't torment you much longer. Now, at the same time, we're talking now about the end of the Middle Ages, the beginning of the Reformation. The Church teaches that there are 3 reasons to marry. And I'm sorry that Father Moreau isn't here because he would be glad to hear me quoting the Catechism of the Council of Trent, which I'm about to do. Okay? The Catechism of Trent, which was, of course, the first and the only universal catechism of the Catholic Church for 400 years, published under the authority, rather, of Pius V in 1566, gives 3 reasons, not 3 ends, 3 reasons, 3 things married people who wish to be married, ought to consider before entering into the matrimonial state. 3 reasons. The first is that this very society, I'm quoting now, this very society of the 2 sexes, sought by an instinct of nature, entered into with the hope of mutual help, that each, assisted by the work of the other, may be able more easily to bear the hardships of life and stand up under the weakness of old age. First reason. Second reason, the desire for procreation. Not so much, however, to leave behind heirs to inherit property and wealth, as to bring up worshipers in the true faith. And this was one reason why, from the beginning, God instituted marriage. Third reason, this was added to the others. After the fall of our first parents, when, on the account of the loss of the righteousness in which man was created, appetite began to resist right reason, namely, that anyone who is aware of personal weaknesses and wishes to avoid the struggle with the flesh may use the remedy of marriage to avoid the sins of lust. These, therefore, the Catechism concludes, are the reasons, and those who wish to contract marriage piously and religiously, as become the children of saints, should propose one or more of them to themselves. Now, what I want you to notice about the Catechism of the Council of Trent is that it gives us 3 reasons, and they're in the reverse order of St. Thomas. St. Thomas gives us primary and secondary reasons. The Catechism reverses them. Okay? Catechism of the Council of Trent reverses them. There's a certain tension in church thinking here. It's not that any element of marriage is being repudiated. There's a search for the right balance, the right ordination of purposes one to another. Now I'm going to jump ahead to the 20th century. In the 20th century, and specifically in Gaudium et Spes, right, the pastoral constitution on the church in the modern world of the Second Vatican Council, the church's teaching on marriage developed and reached a kind of fulfillment. The tension is largely ameliorated, largely resolved. Okay? This resolution began with Pius XI in a very great encyclical, Casti Connubii, published at the end of 1930. It reaffirms the truths about marriage which the Church had always taught. But in the good of fidelity, Pius XI implicitly includes conjugal love, for he lists the fostering of conjugal love among the secondary ends of both marriage and of the marital act. So the fostering of that special friendship that can subsist only with one's husband or one's wife, which we may call conjugal love, that the Pope in Casti Connubii lists as one of the secondary ends of marriage and of the marital act, that is to say, of sexual intercourse. Moreover, in explaining fidelity, Pius teaches that conjugal love underlies its realization. Conjugal love, quoting, pervades all the duties of married life and possesses a certain primacy of nobility in Christian marriage, unquote, and thus suggests that conjugal love brings about the intrinsic perfection of the marital communion. Distinguishing authentic conjugal love from lust, sentiment, and empty talk, Pius explains that true love is expressed by action, which must go beyond mutual help and have as its primary purpose that the spouses help each other grow in virtue and holiness. This mutual molding, he writes, of husband and wife, this determined effort to perfect each other can, in a very real sense, as the Roman Catechism, the Catechism of the Council of Trent teaches, be said to be a chief reason and purpose. The Latin is causa et ratio, the words which are used to talk about the defining character of a thing, causa et ratio, of matrimony, provided matrimony be looked at not in the restricted sense as instituted for the proper conception and education of a child, but more widely as a communion, companionship, and association of life as a whole. This view in Casti Connubii was confirmed by Pius XI in the usual sort of inverse way. A number of theologians took this particular bit in their mouths and ran with it, saying, therefore, the principal reason for marriage is the unitive reason. And some leading theologians of the day even set procreation off on the side as something that might or might not happen, right, in the case of marriage. Now, they meant not just biologically, but morally, might or might not happen. Okay? Pius XII rejected that. Rejected that way of reading Casti Connubii out of hand. As a result, we are left with just one possibility: to treat parenthood as part of the communion of married life. All right? Okay? Vatican II then articulated an integrated view of marriage and the family. Rather than reducing marriage to its essence, which is fully realized as soon as the wedding ceremony ends, Vatican II regards marriage as an ongoing community. Germain Grisez calls it an open-ended community. By open-ended, he doesn't mean open to anything. What he means is there are some common goods, some communities that we participate in until a goal is achieved. The goal is achieved, the community is dissolved, we go on to another. Okay? But marriage is an open-ended community in this respect. It's a community in which the goal is the perfection of the community itself, and the perfection of the community itself is realized in part by the supervention of children, by the coming into the lives of the parents as children. Every good that parents are capable of, that husband and wife rather, are capable of bestowing on each other in the absence of a child is multiplied, intensified, ramified by the presence of a child. That's what the Second Vatican Council saw and taught explicitly. I'll give you just two quotes because I know I'm going on a bit long and I want to stop and open this to questions. Let me give you John Paul II. The totality